right, welcome back, fellow jazz bums. Today we are so excited. We have three guests here. Anthony Wilson, Kevin Gray, and Joe Harley have joined us to talk about Kevin's Coherent Records sophomore release. Before we jump into it, remember to like and subscribe. We're going to link to our Jazz Bums Discord. Come hang out there with us. And then we live stream every Friday night, so come and check us out there as well. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Felipe to get us started.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you very much, Anthony, for joining us. So briefly, Joe and Kevin are already like friends of the channel. They have been with us here before. Joe, legendary producer. Kevin, one of the greatest engineers, sound master engineers in the world. We're going to talk about the second release on his own label. And to join us today, the featured artist on this release. We're very happy to hear today Anthony Wilson. Anthony is a guitar player. He was born in LA in 1968. He's the son of the famous trumpet player and band leader Gerald Wilson, which already had a Tone Poet release last year, I believe. So he started his own solo albums in 1997 with the No Net, which was already had like a Grammy nomination right off the bat. Had some more recordings with this format. Then he jumped into a trio, Our Gang, Solvivity, Jack of Hearts, more like framing, the Hammond-based jazz. 2011, he had a beautiful record called Sessions with John Montleone, Julian Lage, and Chico Pinheiro. Beautiful guitar quartet, which also has an accompanying documentary. In 2016, he goes big departure there. He records Frogtown, which has more vocals, different approaches, more layers. And in Songs and Photographs, 2019, is a more personal view, kind of mixed with this work with photography, which you're going to talk about later. It's more like a visual project, not only music. His most recent release is Collodion on Colorfield Records, which Kevin also works with them on a Pete Means label. He's been a member of Diana Krall's quartet since 2001. He's played with Charles Lloyd, Ron Carter, Mose Allison, Bobby Hutcherson, Harold Land. In the pop world, he played with Paul McCartney, Willie Nelson, Leon Russell, arranging, playing, doing a little bit of everything. He was
find any bigger name guys to record with.
No, yeah, looked around. Is that all?
He's been received several awards and nominations. He was awarded the Thelonious Monk Institute International Composers Award in '95, commissions from Jazz Lincoln Center, LA Philharmonic Association, International Association for Jazz Education, Henry Mancini Institute, Jazz Coalition Fund. In 2018, he was selected a MacDowell Fellow. And today we're going to talk about his new project, working with Kevin and Joe for Coherent Records. Welcome to the channel, Anthony. We're really honored to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Really. I hope to live up to all of that stuff that, that I've done in the past.
One minor little thing that is kind of an interesting point, I think, is that the very first time that Anthony and I worked together was on the Seasons record, the John Montleone thing. So
that's right.
It's been a few years now.
It sure has.
Oh, very cool. Well, again, thank you all for joining us. Anthony, you're definitely, we thought we had arrived when we got Kevin and Joe to join us in the past, and now we're getting like musical artists. This is really special for us. So I guess the first question is pretty simple. It's, how did this project kind of come about?
Well, I was just, as far as I know, I felt honored that that Joe and Kevin approached me, saying, well, Kevin's got this new venture, doing things the old way, which is something I love doing. I mean, I like all manner of producing music, from very production-y standpoint, but then all the way to simply the way that we play small group jazz in a room with some people and nothing else in the way. And so when Kevin and Joe explained to me that they were doing something like this, I was already just interested from the standpoint of a listener and a lover of that approach to making music. A few musicians in a room playing acoustically with no headphones, going straight to analog is just awesome. And I guess at some point they said, maybe you'd like to do a project, and I was on board from the jump. I mean, I just love these guys, and I love what they do. And I knew it would be fun. I had been making projects over the last number of years that really weren't like just getting into a room and playing. They involved more production. The most recent record that I had been doing which is called Collodion that you mentioned, is fairly electronic based, and there's a lot of synthesizer and a lot of cutting and pasting and kind of manipulation sonically. So I hadn't been in that space on my own recently, and I was excited by the prospect of picking a good group of people that I trusted, and just being together and feeling that kind of spontaneous thing. So I'm just glad that Kevin and Joe had me in their minds.
Awesome. Very cool.
We're
That was
equally
easy.
excited.
To follow up on that, Anthony, you've obviously recorded in studios around the world, have toured, and I've been on stages around the world, all different experiences with different vibes. Going into Kevin's studio, have you ever experienced a recording environment like that? And did that environment impact your process at all?
Well, I've done a few albums, either that were multi-tracked or direct to 2-track. I did an album called Adult Themes in around 99 or 2000. That was with my 9-piece band, and we did it at the Village Studio D in Los Angeles, which is the room that was famous for being built for Fleetwood Mac, and where they made the bulk of the album Tusk. And it's a great room, and I've recorded there many, many times over the years, but that was the first time. And I was interested in the idea of recording with no headphones, because I found that with my 9-piece band, a lot of what happened was you'd get in a studio and there was so much trying to get balances and figure out how it all worked, and so much kind of separation that I found it took a little away from the musical experience, and I wanted to experiment with recording in that way. Basically, everybody in the room, and with no headphones. But there are not a lot of people that really want to do that, are interested in that.
Really?
And they'll tell you, I mean, especially in around 2000, you didn't have people talking about working that way. So I was looking for somebody who might be interested in producing and engineering this. And a friend of mine knew the producer and engineer Bones Howe, Howe,
Old friend.
Bones Howe, who is just a legend in the world of recording and production. I mean, was he at United Recorders, or was he Western?
Western Studio 3 was where he liked to work a lot, and then later on he went to Wally Hyder after Wally duplicated that room.
Right. And when I was growing up in LA and getting records, you'd always see Bones Howe either as a recording engineer or as a producer. He produced a lot of the early Tom Waits records that are so great, like the Nighthawks at the Diner, I'm pretty sure is Bones Howe, those early records. And so the person who was running the small label that I was recording for, which was called the Mama Foundation, which also was an interesting little venture because it had been started by a guy named Gene Serwinski, who owned
Erwin Vega.
founded the company Serwin Vega, the
Oh, wow.
loudspeaker company.
Mhm.
And he's a huge jazz fan, and he wanted to create a label. And so anyway, I eventually started my first records were made for them. And Doug, who was running the label, said, well, I've talked to this guy, Bones Howe. And immediately I was like, Bones Howe, oh my God. And he's into the idea of like recording the band with no earphones, everybody in the same room, not obsessing over isolation.
Mhm.
And we made this album, and I love the album still to this day. It was called Adult Themes, mostly original music, and was with my 9-piece band at the time. And I just loved that. I mean, there was nothing in between the musicians and the making music and the recording process. It all just sort of felt like one thing, and it worked very well. But it was because we had somebody with experience in this world, knew what to do. We set up tight to get together, and we said, okay, this is the way we're gonna do this. And then several years later, we made the Our Gang and Civivity albums with Joe producing for Ying Tan's Groove Note label.
Mhm.
And those were done in a single room with no earphones and direct to 2-track, correct?
2-track. Yep.
With Mike Ross engineering. And also, again, like just great, and I mean, you got a Hammond B3 in the room and a Leslie, and you got guitar and amps and drums. And that
I'm guessing this was Western Studio 3.
this was a cello, which is now
it was Western.
And it was the little
Yep, Studio 3.
the Beach Boys room.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was the Bones Howe room.
The Bones
Yeah.
album. Yes.
Amazing. So interesting through line there. But it was just a joy. I mean, we just went in and we played our music that we had played when we would play gigs, and we could hear each other, and there was no kind of futzing around for balances and having something in between. And then I hadn't done anything like that for some time. And so it was a really why it was so exciting when Kevin and Joe mentioned it. And plus I'd worked with Kevin in the mastering studio on numerous releases. So I knew that it would be a smooth, we work well together and get along, and we all like hanging out with each other. And so, I mean, I guess at some point I went over when Joe and Kevin were cutting some of the Tone Poet releases, and Kevin walked us into this space, this little Hackensack West, and he said, "This is how we're going to do it, and you'll all be together, and there's no need for headphones because there's no time delay. There's, you don't need to isolate, and you can just get your sound." So, just over the years, a few different times, and I growing up playing in ensembles, so much of what we do is about creating our own blend and playing in a dynamic way together. And sometimes that becomes much more difficult every layer of production that you add, so to retain some sense of ensemble blend and dynamics by doing this is always exciting. But you do need musicians who like to play that way and understand how to like to record that way, because not everybody's used to that, and that can also throw some people. They're like, okay, wait, I need to get my mix, so anyway.
So I have a quick follow-up to that. Is it more like, I mean, you said it's like, playing live with a group. Are you in these kind of recording sessions when you're all together, are you reacting to each other and listening and doing all that stuff like you would be if you were doing a live gig?
Absolutely. And it does require being closer together. If the farther apart you get in a room, if it gets large, I think, and we've talked about this, Joe and I and Kevin, that okay, because of those time delays and things that are happening,
Mhm.
that can actually spoil it. You do need to play like you would on a small bandstand, so that you really are the immediacy of the bass sound. It's just a couple of feet from my ear, and the drums is right next to him. Piano's open and facing me, and so it's happening there right away. And you can play softly, you can dig in, you're reacting and improvising together. It's a very exciting way to play. People, also are so accustomed these days to going, oh, I messed that thing up, I can fix it. Okay, but if you're going straight to tape, live to 2 tracks,
Right.
if somebody missed the bass line, or if I missed my some chording that I'm trying to do, like, we just have to go, well, which is the best take? Because I can't go and fix that, or go and fix that melody. So that thing that's come into music over the years in production, which I totally respect and I think it's fine and great, to be able to fix and hone something during the process, that's also taken off the table. So it is really about
Mhm.
being together, being on point, and reacting. And if somebody plays 4 extra bars, instead of going back to the repeat sign that was supposed to happen, well, we're all there together and listening like we would on a gig, and we play those, and those things happen. I love that.
Well, that's where a lot of the magic comes through in the music, I think.
Absolutely. And I think probably all of the records that we all love so much, or a great many of them, contain those elements of surprise, mistake, little roughnesses, little evidence of humanity.
Makes it human for sure. For
It makes
sure.
it real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anthony, I'll never forget the first time I showed you the room. Your first comment was, I could record in this space, but I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking at that instant that it would actually happen, right?
So good.
I think it was about a month later, and you said, I'd like to do an album in your room. And I said, for you? And you go, no, for you. Anyway.
Fantastic. Yeah. No, it's so great. And the piano is excellent, sounds great. And yeah, it feels like home, because it's like a home, it's in a house, which is awesome.
I like to call it it's a smoky little jazz club without the smoke.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, just following up with Joe now. Joe, that was the first time you produced a record for Kevin in the studio, right?
Yes.
Coherent? Yeah. So, and you worked with Anthony in the past. I mean, of course, you worked with
Many times.
Kevin daily. So, how
Seemingly.
was producing a record in that new studio now? First time doing it, the both of you working together in that new space for you as a producer perspective. How did that work?
Fantastic. A group like this, I mean, my God, look at the players. You've got, Anthony and Gerald Clayton and John Clayton, his father, and Jeff Hamilton. I mean, you've got basically some of the greatest musicians on earth, and they play together and have for years and years. So, I mean, it doesn't get better than that. So for me, honestly, at that point, production just becomes making sure that Kevin and I, do our job. And because those cats are going to do their job. It's not even a question. The way we approached it, because they didn't have headphones, and it's funny, they kind of mixed themselves. Kevin and I both noticed that, where we would think we'd have to go raise the level or something, and you'd realize, no, there's a piano solo and Gerald's playing louder, like he would on a gig. And so, it's funny, the mix sort of, I mean, I'm not going to say it happens all on its own. We had to do things, but the band is reacting to each other naturally, and with no impediment of, each guy with his mix box and headphones. They're just hearing themselves, and they mix themselves like they would at a gig. It's so much, and the sessions go a lot faster because you're not fussing with all that other stuff. As soon as you introduce mix boxes and headphones, you're adding hours and hours to the process. So it was honestly a lot of fun. I mean, we all had fun.
It was a 2-day party, and we got some recording done too.
Exactly. That was going to be the follow-up. How long did that take? How many days? 2 days?
Well, there was a rehearsal day and then 2 recording days.
Yep.
And Joe and I weren't really involved in the rehearsals because we were busy doing a tone poet at the time.
Yeah, but it helped us get set in the room.
In the room, yeah, it was
settled
perfect.
in the room and figure out where we needed to be, and which was good. That was really good. And then so that then on the day when the tape was rolling and the light was on, we could just play, because we'd sort of figured that out, the ergonomics of it. Also, so interesting too, much fewer recording elements in the room. I mean, there were 4 microphones, if I'm not mistaken.
You're
So
right.
that's also sometimes a thing, like, oh, there's lots of stuff around this kind of, I love the simplicity of just like one microphone for the guitar, one microphone on the bass, one mic in front of the drums, and one on the piano. How simple can you get? So great.
Okay, I got to tell my Jeff Hamilton story. So Jeff is notorious in LA for telling telling engineers to take microphones away. It's not uncommon. It's probably average, I would say, to put 8 mics on the drums, and Jeff would say, take that one away and that one away and that one away, and leave a couple of overheads and a snare mic maybe and kick drum mic, right? And so he said to me when he was setting up his drums, he goes, I'm really curious to see what you can do with one mic on this. And I felt like, oh boy, the pressure's on, so I'm futzing around with where to put it and all this kind of stuff. And when he listened to the first playback, he went, yeah, this is great. So I was really happy.
You used the U47 clone for that?
Actually, no, it's an M49.
Okay.
M49C. No,
Cool.
Great microphone.
One mic on the drums. Wow.
One mic on the drums, and it's all there. Like you hear.
It sounds like there's a kick drum mic and there isn't.
Yeah, no, you hear him. The way we would kind of set it up is I'd bring them back to hear the playback, because it's important that they know, like, what are we getting? What do we sound like? We know what we sound like in the room, but how is it recording? And they came back to hear the first playback, and everyone was smiling. Jeff was like, how is that one microphone doing that? And so anyway, the confidence is there, and then the session just kind of goes, because everyone knows, okay, we just do our thing and they'll do their thing, and it's gonna work. And that's kind of how it was.
Yeah, just for information, we recorded 9 songs, no more than 3 takes on any song. I think it was only one that we did 3 on. And there were a couple that we only did 1 take on, and then we were putting 6 on the record.
It's like an old school jazz production in pretty much every way.
Oh yeah,
very cool.
This is how, I mean,
couple of takes, a day or 2 to record the whole thing. It's amazing.
And the room is not the exact same size, but very similar to Rudy's Hackensack room, which is why we call it Hackensack West.
Yeah.
And the album is going to be called Hackensack West.
Oh
wow. Oh,
that's
there
awesome.
we go.
Oh,
And there's a
title.
tune. There's a tune on the record called Hackensack West.
Fantastic.
Wow.
I love it.
Amazing information. Kevin, where are we at? Where are you at in kind of the process of, the album being completed, mastering?
Well, we just took a
release
huge
date?
leap forward a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, the last time that Joe came in. One of the big things that kind of held things up was, with Anthony's touring, which is a pretty intense schedule, picking the tunes that we want to put on the record and picking the takes that we want to put on the record, and figuring out a sequence. And I actually left that up to Joe and Anthony because, well, they're both great at it. So it made sense. And so when Joe came in the last time 3 weeks ago, we sequenced the tape and have a master tape ready to cut. So tentatively planning to cut it in the next week or two, and get some test pressings, and
we have album art
that's coming along beautifully
within the next few days, so we should be pretty quick.
That sounds great.
No sweat getting that out first quarter. As a matter of fact, with some kind of luck, we might actually get it out by the end of January.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
That's
And
great.
Mike Esposito at the In Group, he's going to be your main distributor for this record.
Distributor to the distributors, yeah.
And then it'll be available online at Music Direct, Lucid Disc, and Acoustic Sounds. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then also in Germany for the EU at Siva King Sound,
Okay.
and at F Minor in the UK.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Very cool.
Those are the 6 distributors, including in the groups themselves.
Yeah.
Cool.
So wrapping up this production part now. Anthony, I believe you just came back from Brazil, right? Not a couple of weeks ago.
I was there about 2 weeks ago. We were in São Paulo and in Brasilia and in Rio de Janeiro.
Yes. So now this mastering, mixing taking place. Are you the type of guy that gets involved into that? Because some musicians just step out of the studio, some stay and keep working on the record. How did you participate?
If I'm free on the day well, I mean, obviously we were not mixing, so because we were straight to 2 tracks, so there was not the necessity to do that. But as far as listening to tracks, listening to takes, picking among takes, Joe and I discussed those things while I was out on the road. And then sequence, I mean, Joe is like a sequence guru. He in fact, I think my album Frogtown, he did the sequence for sure, Songs and Photographs.
Collodion, I think, was he involved in that?
Yes, I think you listened to it and
I did.
I think you sequenced the thing basically.
Yeah.
He's just got incredible instincts about that, and especially just like pacing. So I trust Joe very much, and not myself in terms of that department as well. But I just love the process. So if there were mixing, I would have been there, and for sure, if I'm free on the day that they and I'm in town on the day that they cut, I just love to see that whole thing happen and go down and hear it on Kevin's system, which is really special. And I mean, I love to be as much of a part of anything that I do without getting in the way. Sometimes artists can meddle a little bit too much in the jobs that other people are doing, and that can that can mess things up. So I wouldn't want to be that guy, but I don't think I am.
You're not that guy.
They know that guy apparently.
Oh yeah, we've all dealt. Yeah, Joe and I have dealt with that guy a couple of times.
Yeah.
Another neat
It is
feature there with you talking about sequencing. That's kind of a lost art. I mean, and there are tons of artists that are making full albums still. I mean, don't get me wrong, but there's most music isn't really seem to be built that way anymore. Does that make sense? Like,
So
for our viewers, we're all jazz vinyl freaks, so it's really important to us, and we really appreciate that effort of not only recording songs, but putting them together in a way that makes sense and is consumable and enjoyable.
Well, in like the CD era, albums got so long. Generally people didn't listen. If a CD was, what was the maximum you could get, like 74
minutes.
Almost 70.
And some people really exploited that. And you're not in a sitting, most people aren't listening to those really long CDs in a sitting. And then with the advent of kind of streaming world stuff, people listen to songs and don't always listen to albums. So this resurgence of vinyl, in which two sides kind of tell a story, and create an experience, because you put on your first side, you listen to the first side, 20 minutes later you get up, you turn it over. That special thing creates again a need to come back and more thoughtfully sequence things, which I think is great. And also people have started making records shorter again. I mean, I think people's attention spans aren't 70 minutes long for one album generally, unless you're like into symphonies and things like that, but
It used to crack me up in the beginning of the CD era. Everybody was throwing quote unquote bonus tracks on to fill out the, and it's like, that isn't needed,
Yeah.
No, totally agree.
So I know we touched upon some of the sidemen that you were working with on this album. So Gerald Clayton and John Clayton, Jeff Hamilton. Is there any additional any additional context you can give as to how this group came together, and then the energy in the room and how it kind of all went down? I know you spoke a little bit about this already, but anything additional to that?
Just from a personal level, I've been playing with John and Jeff since about 2000, 99. I joined their big band and was in the big band for several years. And then together...
Hamilton Clayton Jazz Orchestra.
Yes, the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra, and which was originally also John's brother, Jeffrey, who played alto saxophone and reeds, flute, clarinet, oboe. He was an incredible musician who passed away a couple of years ago. So the three of them led the band, and I played guitar in it for several years. And then that kind of dovetailed with John and Jeff and I spending a couple of years touring with Diana Krall. They had known her and been mentors of hers and friends for another decade and a half before I came on board. But there was that closeness, almost like being a family. So over these last 20-something years, playing with John and Jeff has been a really, really special experience for me. I just click with them really tightly. And because of the experience, it just got better and better, so that we hardly have to talk about musical things. We can just, what are we playing? Here we go. And it just somehow works. And Gerald, who was quite young when he was probably a young teenager when I started playing with Jeff and John, in the meantime grew up and became one of the greatest piano players playing on earth right now, and really one of my truly favorite musicians. And so over those years, we also forged a relationship, and he's played in my bands, and we've just done quite a bit together. And we've played with Charles Lloyd in this recent Ocean Trio. Yes, there it is. And so I thought, okay, for an experience like this, to feel as close to family as I could make it is what I would like to do. So it seemed like, it was first thought in my mind, who would I want to do this with? Jeff and John and Gerald. Just because it's just, it's like finishing each other's sentences and thinking in some way as one. It just makes the music, it just makes it magical.
You need to get this thing out like now, Kevin. I'm excited. Talking about
I played a couple of songs for Mike Esposito when he came out to visit, and as soon as the records, the particular track started, he said, "What instrument is that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "What instrument is that?" It was a combination of the guitar and the piano. You guys were playing so in sync. He thought he was hearing some unique instrument.
Wow.
So awesome. Yeah. There is that real sense of tightness that we all have. That's very special.
Yeah.
Now, is that, I would guess, I mean, I'm not a musician, but would that be much harder to get if you were all, in booths and separated? Like, does the togetherness kind of contribute to that more, or?
I just think that the togetherness enhances it and lifts it up a little bit and elevates it and creates an opportunity for more of that. But I mean, of course, over the years playing in the studio with John and Jeff, say on Diana's albums, and sometimes Gerald has been there present too for playing a second piano or a different part. The jokes and the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the fatherhood and it's still right there. But that
You can hear it on all the space between the takes on the tape.
Yeah, but definitely being together in that room, it just elevates and offers another portal to something really special. Yeah.
No, yeah, it is quite interesting. I think later we're going to get into the songs, but I had the same impression when this interplay, piano and guitar. I thought it was fantastic. Although a very different context. I mean, lyrically remind me of Undercurrent. That kind of flow that goes so nice. It's so perfect, right?
Beautiful.
Cool.
One thing that was really fun back in, I guess it was in April, Charles Lloyd played with the trios at the Soraya Theater here in Northridge, near where I live. And I went to that concert. And for me, half of the fun of it was watching the expression and everything between Gerald and Anthony playing off of each other, with Charles. And it was just, I mean, you guys were just smiling and grinning and digging in, and it was so cool.
It's it's impossible for me to overstate my respect for Gerald as a musician. It's just how he finds his place in the music is something, in any situation and any kind of style and any kind of context. He seems to so beautifully, intuitively, and thoughtfully enter the space and do exactly what you're wanting, and so to play with somebody like that, then you can really get into something, because that thoughtfulness is going on, and the responsiveness is just so cool.
Yeah, one of the things for me that's exciting about this too is, we love all the work that Kevin and Joe, y'all do with the classics series and the Tone Poets and all those wonderful records that are getting reissued. But it's really important to me and to the three of us that the music continues, right? And this crossover between all the traditional stuff that you're doing, Kevin, and then the fact that it's a new recording is special, and we're excited for it for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very great
We want
spot.
the music to continue,
Yeah.
Lots of great music being made. I mean, we love that stuff from the 50s and 60s, but there's fantastic stuff going on right now. And this is evidence of it.
We're looking forward to hitting you with some of it.
So Kevin, your first record, it was a different setup, wind instruments, saxophone, trombone, whole different setup. Now it's a guitar center quartet. Did you have to rethink your room, rethink your approach, or you just did the same as if?
Not at all, really. I mean, Anthony positioned himself where he felt the most comfortable, where he could see Gerald. Well, everybody could see everybody the way we had it set up. But no, it just all kind of fell into place when I placed the microphones and opened up the pots on the mixer and, panned it, panned it guitar left, drums right, bass and piano in the center.
Rudy would have been proud.
Yeah. It was a very Rudy kind of
Yes.
spatialness. You brought up a point earlier that I think is interesting, Anthony, when you were talking about when you start spacing the musicians farther away you know, you get more time delay and it changes the sound. And I think that's why I always have preferred Hackensack to Englewood Cliffs. I mean, they're both great records came out of both, but I can always hear that intimacy in the Hackensack stuff, whether it's mono or stereo. It's just there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Kevin. The 2024 Tone Poet list, I think the Clifford Jordan is the one I'm looking for most for, and that's like 1565, which I'm pretty sure is Hackensack. So that
Oh yeah.
all plays into it.
While we were getting prepared for this, since we were going to have Anthony on, I've dug into your discography quite a bit, and I got a feel for just kind of how different your projects are, which is amazing. I love the color field project, Collodion. I listened to that thing 3 or 4 times. It's amazing. I'm gonna get the record that the record you cut, Kevin. I saw that on your Bandcamp, Anthony. So if anybody's interested, you can definitely go out to Anthony's Bandcamp and pick a copy of that up. But anyway, so that was really cool. And then I felt a really strong kind of emotional connection with The Plan for Paris.
Thank you.
You know, which is like a, you know, you singing and you know, kind of more singer-songwriter feel to me, which was really cool to see. So it's kind of, I may be wrong, but it seems like it's been a while since you led a more traditional just jazz record like this one. What inspires you to create such a wide variety of projects?
You know, there's so much that I love about music.
He's a multi-dimensional cat.
Yeah, for sure.
I went for my little morning hike this morning, and there's a little shop in Echo Park near where I hike, and it's like a small little grocery store, and I needed to get some eggs and some juice and some stuff to make breakfast, and I walked in and they were playing King Pleasure, Moody's Mood for Love with the version with Harold Land on saxophone. And this record was one of my favorite records when I was about 12 years old. It was in my mom's record collection. I think the name of the record is Golden Days, King Pleasure, Golden Days. It's a great album. I think Gerald Wiggins is on piano. I forget who's on bass and drums. It was a great album, and King Pleasure singing Moody's Mood for Love. So I was getting my juice and stuff, and I was started singing along with the King Pleasure, and the woman behind the counter, she heard me doing it, and she said to her colleague behind the counter, she said, "See, the real ones know." The real ones know. And you know, I mean, I just, from something like that kind of music, which is a part of my just growing up, this is the kind of music that my mom loved and listened to. This is where my father came from, you know, old school jazz, bebop and post bebop. That's something that formed me.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I could go to my mom's record collection and put on the Concert for Bangladesh or The Last Waltz or Joni Mitchell Blue, or Eric Satie piano pieces, classical music, Ravi Shankar. So I think it all happened back then when I was something like 8 or 10 or 12 years old, that I was going to like all kinds of music, and that probably I would need to feed myself as a musician, as I became a musician, by not limiting what I did. So there was a period of time in my life, and for sure when I first fell in love with jazz and started to become serious about it, you know, and wanting to learn to play it, and that I almost put blinders on to everything else, and all I did was really listen to jazz records, learn solos off of records, learn tunes. That was my focus. But at a certain point, that other thing came back into those things that I pushed aside so that I could concentrate and try to master a form that I had so much love and respect for, and that requires a lot of you. It requires so much. I would say any form of music or style requires a lot, but jazz might require
More.
over years more to because of the improvisation aspect and the learning of the language that then you have to self-generate, and that it changes, and that you have to be responsive and dynamic with it. Obviously that takes more than a lifetime. But then eventually, when I felt some sense of, okay, I'm doing this, and then I started to bring back other things into my listening, and even then started going, well, gosh, I really loved being in bands when I was in high school where we wrote songs. What if I started writing songs again? I love songs, and I love what lyrics can do for a piece of music, and I love how storytelling in music can be rendered when there's words, and then even then I said, well, let me start writing some lyrics on my own. Let me try this. And I started having bands around 2013, 14, 2012, where I would do instrumental music. We'd play straight ahead music, and then we'd follow it up with an original tune. We'd do covers, and I was kind of trying to pick and choose from the different realms of influence that I had working on me to see, okay, well, how can I kind of create this sense of narrative and storytelling, whether it's instrumental music, whether it's songwriting. And so I just became very interested in doing that again. And for me, that fed back into the instrumental music. And I started thinking to myself, how can I make instrumental music where there's improvising that's a little bit less about soloing? Like, okay, we play and it's funny because actually this record is more of a head. We play a head, and then we do some soloing, and then we play the head again. In general, that's the format of this album. But at the same time, I think over years of thinking about how an improvisation figures in, I was just interested in how musical stories can be told, and that for me is the common space that everything that I'm doing shares in, whether it's this kind of thing with collodion, or even something like playing as a sideman with somebody like Charles, or playing as a sideman with Diana Krall. I'm often thinking, what's the role of my solo right now, or how is my improvisation functioning in this ensemble now to carry forth something more than just my ideas, And so that's the common thing, is that I'm always hoping that I can use music to tell a complete story that transcends just the playing or the improvising. Even in a more traditional jazz trio or quartet, what I'm looking for is that how can we tell a little story here, and how can the solos that take place contribute to that? And that's the common part, and then you can run around in the stylistic, wheelhouses and see what you find.
So we were shared two of the tracks from the album, and I think so. One is Daido, and the other one is Verdesse.
Verdesse, yeah.
And both very different tracks. But building off of what you were just saying, when you were creating these compositions, were these done over a long period of time? Are these compositions that you've been working with in the past, or are these new for the album? And then also, are there any standards on the album?
So I wrote, if I'm not mistaken, 7 songs, 7 or
of the 9 that we recorded.
Yes, And the way that I did it was that I had been away and on tour, and I came home about 10 days before. I was in Europe, and I came home about 10 days before the session. I got home, I think, on a Friday or Thursday night. I gave myself Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to get over the jet lag. And then on Monday, I started writing a song a day for the album. And I thought that, I thought ahead that this was what I was going to do. I was going to write. I had some songs that I'd written, but I kind of wanted to think about John and Jeff and Gerald and the way we might play together. And then to just come in fresh without a lot of thinking. Mm-hmm. And I love this idea of writing a song a day. Mm. I mean, there's one particular really great project I actually have. I was telling a student about it yesterday, so I happen to have this book, but this is the Hermeto Pascual Calendario do Som. And this is in 96, in 95, in 96, he started in June to write a song a day. Mm-hmm. And so the book is it's facsimiles of his hand manuscripts, which in Hermeto Pascual, for any listener or for anybody who's interested in a true genius poet, kind of visionary. I mean, you know from that, you know what you're dealing with right there. And there's beautiful films of him. Miles Davis recorded his music. Just a real visionary. And so I always liked that idea of what happens if you sit down and you limit yourself. I'm going to write something today, beginning, middle, and end. I'm not going to think it. I'm not going to think. I'm not going to plan. It becomes in a similar way, kind of an improvisational process, and you're connecting with your first thoughts, and you're following your first thoughts through, and you maybe you come up with a concept. I'm going to write something that's a little bit like a certain kind of tune or with a certain groove, and so the groove helps you tell the story and get to the theme, and then go. So I created this goal of each day I would basically have a finished song, and it would be written out, and so that was a great week. That was all I did. Wow. And then I think I think I did 6, and then I took a break, and then I wrote one more, which turns out to be the song called Verdesse. So it was thinking about the players, thinking like that there's a little bass kind of motive that starts the song called Daido, bing bing bong, bing bing bong, and I was just hearing John Clayton's beautiful bass sound in my head. Like, I just want to hear him do bing bing bong, ding ding dong. And so then I started there and came up with a little melody, and it started to bar by bar. I got someplace, and beautiful way to kind of create something out of something from nothing. I did do a couple of covers. There's a song by Todd Rundgren called Marlene, which is one of my favorite songs of his. It's kind of a rather inappropriate song in 2023. The lyrics are definitely about somebody way too old, liking somebody way too young, and it's sort of inappropriate, but it's a great song.
Well, you didn't sing it, you just played it.
That's true. But a great melody, almost like a Burt Bacharach type of melody.
It is. It very much is.
Yeah, beautiful harmonies, and then we recorded a song by Abdullah Ibrahim called Maraba Blue. Beautiful, simple piece.
Very cool.
Did we record any other
No, I
those
think
were the
everything else
two.
is yours.
So yeah, it was the 7 that I wrote day by day plus those 2.
Right. Hey, I want to add one thing. I saw Anthony down at Sam First by the LA airport with was it Josh Nelson, all right?
Mhm.
And you played Daido, and the audience reaction I thought was just amazing.
Oh,
And what hit me, it's a very different rendition, because of other musicians, different musicians, than what is on the record. And I had heard, the recording several times, but hearing that with you playing it live, it was like I was hearing a jazz standard.
Mm.
It hit me that way.
When you were when we were recording this, and I was hearing these tunes for the first time, and you remember, Anthony, I said, "Did you really write a song? Because these things sound fully formed. In fact, they sound like they could be standards.
Yes.
Really do these one a day?" And he goes, "Yeah, I did." I couldn't believe it. I was amazed. I mean, you guys will hear it when you hear the full album, but yeah.
But I love that idea of creating something really, I want my songs to be good. This goes back to that question, about different styles, and then I kind of tangentially was talking about how I want things to have some kind of meaning or some kind of significance, and I don't just want to write a tune, like I want the tunes to be good tunes, like really good tunes.
You didn't disappoint.
I think sometimes, and I guess, thank you. And what I mean to say is, like, sometimes I feel like people write tunes, and the tune is, the reason for the tune is to be a vehicle for something else.
Mm.
It's to be a vehicle for people to solo over in general. So that the important thing for so many players, and I respect this, it's just not my slant, is really about the soloing. I mean, jazz has a grand tradition about being about soloing. So I'm not, I don't mean it in a disparaging way. The soloist, the primacy of a great soloist such as Sonny Rollins, playing with a trio, just commanding everything by virtue of the brilliance of the soloing, is really awesome. And I respect it greatly. For me, there's this other place that a tune can go, or I almost don't even like saying tune. I like saying song, and the song then can carry more, and the song can almost help the improviser find a place in the song itself. The song is saying, okay, don't forget about me. I mean, the first great proponent of this kind of thinking, or the two greatest, I would think, are Duke Ellington and Thelonious Monk. Monk very, very deeply puts you in a certain headspace when you play a particular song. If you're playing Well You Need An, or Ruby My Dear, or Epistrophe, the forms of these songs is so strong, and even though it might be a 32 bar song, or with typical form, there's something about the way the melody is placed, the way certain elements are placed. And I mean, he's the grand architect of this kind of using a song to then take the improviser someplace, to elevate the improvisation, or to hold it and contain it, so that the performance kind of soars in a different way. So I just love that. And so even writing during a day, that was my thinking, like, okay, I just want this song to be like a little jewel that has its different facets. And so you heard Verdesse, it's just got its little beauties about it, and it just works, and I'm just grateful that I've figured out how to do those kind of things. It makes composing a pleasure. Composing is a total pleasure for me, because it's like, it's like making a little collage or something with different elements, and even that song is probably 24 bars or something, but it just works. It takes you on a little journey. Daido for sure has its own little kind of painting and world that it creates sonically, and then that helped us play, I think. So
yeah, they feel very.
I can't get it out of my head. I love that tune. I love that tune.
Yeah,
The birth of a new jazz standard, maybe there.
yeah,
I think so. There's a lot of earworms on this album. A lot of very memorable tunes.
And the songs that we heard, they were not even fully mastered yet, but they already sounding terrific.
Awesome.
We really felt connected to it. Now, still on the record side, we know you're a very visual person. You photograph. You go back to Louisiana every once in a while to take your pictures there. I photograph too. I still use film. So
awesome.
in a sense that, in that regard, did you participate? Did you work on the artwork for the record? How did that come from? How did you guys work that part?
For this record?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's a guy here in Los Angeles who sort of emerged around our scene of jazz musicians who just tends to be at many gigs photographing. And his name is Brian Bixby. He's a really cool guy, total music lover. He just goes out and constantly takes pictures of musicians, and he's got the right vibe. He's not intrusive, and so
He's really good.
he's really good. And so we asked Brian to come and be in the studio, because I knew he would know how to be in the space with the musicians, so that they didn't feel, why are you? Because that can also, I've been in sessions definitely where you have to tell the person to leave the room, go. And you have some photographers who like talk too much, or they, and then I've seen all manner of things with. So when you find people who just are sensitive to the music and they are musical in the way they work, it's a great thing. So we invited Brian to come and spend the days with us, and right now we're working with a kind of a photographic concept and a typeface that's we're thinking about some of the old Reed Miles and Francis Wolff things, but maybe not just trying to copy. Try to come up with just a beautiful design that'll feel lovely on a 12 by 12 format.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'd like to mention about something that was stated earlier, because I think it's really important to the conversation. You mentioned Bones Howe, and Bones Howe is so well known for his pop recordings. The Fifth Dimension Association goes on and on and on. He started out at Radio Recorders recording jazz.
Right.
And that stuff is amazing. And those are great recordings. Anyway, just had to mention that.
Totally.
Makes a lot of sense. I want to follow up from that, the kind of the photography and art perspective. We had listened to a podcast you did. You discussed a project you were working on about the Mississippi Delta, where you were taking photos and music. Have you has that progressed? How's that going? It sounds like a really interesting concept.
It's a very, very big project of composition, songwriting, and photography that is inspired in part by my family history. My father was from the Mississippi Delta, so my father's side of the family goes back in Mississippi until back to the early 1800s. And when I first went to Mississippi, I always was a fan of many artists from Mississippi: Robert Johnson, Charlie Patton, Pop Staples, Son House, you name it. I love all that music. Sam Cooke, such a great cradle of American music. In fact, Aretha Franklin's older sister was also born in the town that my father was from, Shelby, Mississippi. So, I mean, just a cradle of American music. And so I always was interested to go there. What I didn't anticipate was that I was going to fall in love with this very, very complex place, with deep histories, deep rooted problems, deep-seated racism, history of slavery and exploitation, but at the same time, this family history, great beauty, great natural beauty, the river. And so I devised a project. I started writing songs that sort of alluded to our family history, places, events, but then also almost are like short stories in their way. There are some instrumental pieces, songs with lyrics, and then over these years, which is at this point about 6 years, I've been taking photographs mostly around the Mississippi Delta, but then some places far flung. So eventually I'll make a book and an album. It'll be quite a large project. So it's progressing. It's always progressing. I go back, because you Felipe, you mentioned Louisiana, but it's actually Mississippi.
Yeah, sorry.
And I go back when I have free time, and right now I'm in a phase where I'm taking portraits of a lot of people that I know there. So and in that same way, the way a photograph has its own musicality, I wonder how music can be almost photographic and draw you in. So and it's very personal, this project, because it's so close to our family history. And people are very into and finding things about their ancestry these days. People are sending in their DNA.
Oh, yeah.
and there's that great Henry Louis Gates show called Finding Your Roots. Absolutely fantastic show. So all the surprise that you can find by connecting to your ancestry, all the connection that you find, the points of connection, I find that really fascinating and exciting. So
Yeah, it's exciting. We'll be looking forward to the book and the album whenever you get finished. That sounds like an amazing project for sure.
Yeah. So we're over an hour now. So we want to thank the three of you for joining us to talk about this new project, Hackensack West. I love that title. Chris and Felipe, did you have any last questions or any follow-ups or anything before we get out of here?
Well, I mean, I wanted to give these guys a chance if there's anything else they wanted to talk about the record or any projects or anything else. But for me, I just really appreciate all three of you coming to our little channel and spending time with us. It's been a wonderful experience for sure.
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate the opportunity to. I mean, with the record's not even out yet, and we're able to talk about it. That's so cool. And I really appreciate your interest in what I'm doing and what we've done together. I mean, I want to give huge love and respect to Joe and Kevin. After these many years of working with them, they're the kind of people. They know music. They know their trade. They know about sound. They know what they're doing, and you can trust when you're a musician making records with them. It's just, you can really trust that you're in good hands. It makes it such a excellent experience to kind of go like, I can just concentrate on music because I know these people have my back. Every record that Kevin has ever mastered for me has just come out sounding so like, he doesn't do much, but what he does makes such a difference in how that record sounds ultimately. And it's both it's the experience to know that it's experience to know what he needs to do and what he doesn't need to do, and those ears, and having encountered so many different musical situations. And same with Joe, just unflappable in the studio, so chill. And so makes making records like this just a joy, so
Thanks,
thanks.
Anthony.
Yeah,
Right back at you. Right back
It means
at
a
you.
lot.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So everyone watching, thanks for hanging in there with us. Please share this, like and subscribe so people can find this video. Leave some comments. What did you think about this? What do you think about this new project? And we'd love to hear your feedback. And with that, I just wanted to thank you all today. This was really fun for me. So really appreciate it.
Pleasure and
Yeah.
honor. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Pleasure here.
Thank
Good to
you,
meet
guys.
you guys.
All right.
Yeah.
See ya.
For having us on.